Right now, Zelensky is losing the war, and instead of cutting his losses short, he's doing everything to stay in power and he's prolonging the war because of this, because prolonging the war means staying in power, and he's sacrificing Ukraine just because he wants to stay in power.
Let's talk to Yulia Latynina, the leading Russian journalist who fled the country back in 2017. Yulia, welcome to the program.
Hello.
Would you think Vladimir Putin will be at all concerned about the sanctions that we've heard announced by Britain and the European Union today?
There will be zero concern. It's just a bureaucratic procedure. Russia has been hit by thousands of sanctions already. And this is, first of all, just, bureaucracy exhibiting that it's doing something because it has to present something. And second, that's a distraction from the fact that United Kingdom is not really supplying right now Ukraine with weapons that, really would, if it's possible, that really would make a difference. So we should really pay attention not to what's happening when UK imposes another bunch of worthless sanctions, but to the fact that despite all the bluster and all the visits and all the good words said to President Zelensky, the people in Europe don't really want to engage into this war and just want Zelensky to if Zelensky is willing to sacrifice his nation as an instrument against the increasing of Russian influence, what's the minuses?
Well, when it comes to European public opinion, there is a great deal of support in Europe among the other countries of Europe, not all, and not in the same degree, but support for Ukraine. The opinion polls do tell us that pretty clearly, Yulia, don't they?
No, the opinions are fine, but you don't fight war with opinions. You fight war with weapons, and you fight war with soldiers. The situation with in Ukraine is pretty disastrous. There are 6 million males who fled, who did not register as in the war register. There are 2 million military-age males who fled the country, and around 1/3 of people who are drafted. They are drafted in very atrocious conditions. We see this video, them being beaten on the streets, and that's just to extort the money from those who are not beaten on the streets to evade the draft. And around 1/3 of the people who are drafted are later escaping from the front. Not to mention that some of them are sitting in the front, but paying money to their commanders so not to get sent to the front line.
Now, okay, so what about Putin's view of Trump? Does he fear Trump turning against him? I know there's no sign of that happening, but does he fear that possibility? There are those who say that time may be coming.
Sorry, just because there was a glitch. What did you say?
Tell me, do you believe that Vladimir Putin is in fear, if not of Europe, if not of the United Kingdom, then of Donald Trump? If Trump turns against Putin and Russia, would that be a serious, serious problem for Putin?
Yes, that would have been a very serious problem for Putin, because basically what had been dealing with, to some extent, was a proxy war by United States in Ukraine when it was Biden administration. And there was a great risk, a sufficient risk of escalation to nuclear war. But Trump coming, these possibilities of the table. And yes, Putin would have been scared of Trump. But right now, Trump actually is a great opportunity for him.
Well, in terms of, are you thinking of a business opportunity? I mean, if that is what you mean, what do you say to the British politician who's a prominent figure in this country? He's now a commentator, formerly a government minister, William Hague. He said this morning that Putin is playing Trump like a violin, and that's plainly true, isn't it?
No, that's absolutely not true. I don't know who is better playing the other. The only thing I can say is that Zelensky cannot play Trump at all, because what President Zelensky tries to do, he tries to gather the likes, he tries to gather the votes, and he tries to, do the PR thing. And by doing this, he pretty much upset Trump, to the extent that it seems like Trump is thinking that helping Zelensky will decrease his prestige. And that's an opening that Putin is using.
Okay, but surely do you not accept that Volodymyr Zelensky is the legitimately elected leader of a democracy which was invaded illegally by Russia, and for that reason has a legitimate claim on the support of other democracies, people who value freedom?
Well, the problem is not whether you have legitimate claims or just claims. The problem is whether you are losing or winning the war. And right now, Zelensky is losing the war. And instead of cutting his losses short, he's doing everything to stay in power and he's prolonging the war because of this, because prolonging the war means staying in power. And he's sacrificing Ukraine just because he wants to stay in power. That's my point of view. Sorry.
I'm not sure there's evidence for that. Is there, Yulia? The Ukrainian constitution does not allow for a general election during wartime, and we are looking at Ukraine being asked by Putin to surrender territory that was taken by force and to renounce its right of self-defense. Surely there's only one argument here when it comes to who has justice on whose side.
As I've said, justice is good, but you don't win wars with justice. You win war with people, and you win war with armament. And actually, you win war with fortifications. President Zelensky's government hasn't been building fortifications, but has been stealing money on them for like a year. I mean, you surely can build at least fortifications if you want to pursue the war.
Yeah, I mean, you seem to be making the case then for Ukraine's friends, I mean, maybe principally in Europe, to come to Ukraine's aid and do what they say they are now contemplating doing, which is to supply Ukraine with a hugely increased supply of munitions and weapons and support to enable them to fight successfully against Russia. That seems to be the point that you're making. It's a rallying call for Ukraine and Ukraine's friends.
Well, certainly weapons will help Ukraine fight. But I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that it's not because of lack of weapons that Ukraine was not building fortifications for months, serious fortifications. This was because of corruption. It wasn't doing it because the money was frankly stolen. Ukraine own munition industry is working at a 45% capacity. And this is also because of terrible corruption. And as I've said, the people are running from the front. I'm not saying that Putin's position is very good. Russian army also has greatest difficulties.
Yes.
But in Ukraine, people are running from the front at a tremendous rate because they understand it's not like Israel. It's not the generals. It's not the children of the highest officials who are sitting in the trenches. It's just the poor bloke who was walking his dog, who got snatched off the street, who couldn't pay the ransom money, and who got sent into the meat grinder.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but I don't think that under these conditions, weapons will help very much, especially since Zelensky's insistence on 1995 or 91 borders, which is pretty impossible to achieve. And my best guess, when he's making these impossible demands, like the borders of 1991, reparations, the negotiations from the position of advantage, things like that, as I said, because he understands that as long as the war lasts, he stays in power, and he's sacrificing his nation in order to stay in power.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, well, I hear your interpretation, and for what it's worth, that's not the way that it looks to me. That's not my interpretation of events. But hey, you might have expected me to say a thing like that. As for the state of the war, we're seeing Russian forces being depleted very heavily, losing thousands of troops for the gain of tiny amounts of territory. Russia is also under territory, is it not?
Russian war machine is gaining power with every day. And it's certainly we are not to expect, great onslaught sometime very soon. But it seems more like an unstoppable roller that's rolling over Ukraine, day by day, month by month, it's not gaining much. It's losing a lot in the terms of manpower. But Putin has money to buy this manpower, maybe even North Koreans. And his position, he has strategic advantage. And I don't see how it can be negated without, say, United States going into a Third World War for the question to whom the Chasiv Yar belongs.
Okay, I guess we will now have to see then how well Ukraine's friends in Europe in particular live up to their promises to support that country's fight against the forces of Vladimir Putin. Yulia Latynina, thank you, though, for your perspective today.